I'm very happy to have Bobby Morrison here, the Chief Revenue Officer over at Shopify. I think almost a majority of the people here are utilizing Shopify. I don't need to sell the dream, but it was funny, even during breakfast, I was talking to a brand that's on another platform, and they were telling us how they're in the process of moving over to Shopify. So,
that's good. That's good.
I'm sure you like to hear that.
All those not yet on Shopify, I'll talk to you after this meeting.
Yes,
exactly.
It might be a short line, but
that's okay.
We'll see. Well, one of the many things I love with Shopify is, even like, I know you guys had a huge earnings call last week, and what's been constant for you guys for so long is you guys always lead with GMV or gross merchandise value. And what I like with that is it really aligns your goals with the merchants. We think about that a lot with, when we talk to our board, is, how many orders are we shipping out? Because again, that's just a strong signal for the success of that our brands are having. So maybe if you just want to talk about that a little bit and how that's part of like the ethos of Shopify and aligning yourselves with, with the merchants.
Well, it all starts with, first of all, thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. Have you guys enjoyed the Dallas-Fort Worth area? Have you been able to get out at all, or all at the hotel? All at the hotel. So you haven't really seen much of Dallas-Fort Worth.
We're going to Billy Bob's tonight, so you can tell
Billy
us
Bob's.
what that shows for Dallas-Fort Worth.
My kids love Billy Bob's. You guys should have fun with that. Look, it all starts with our CEO, right? Toby is the most customer-obsessed CEO and founder I've ever met. He wakes up every single day thinking about how to make commerce better for everyone. That's just not cliche, like literally. I think it's his very first child that he had was Shopify. And he cares deeply about it. So every one of you that are with Shopify, thank you very much for choosing us. Just know that you have a team of about 8,000 people that wake up every day in our product groups and our customer success teams everywhere across the organization, really trying to figure out the broken windows, things that we need to do to make Shopify easier, better, faster, more performant than it is today, so that you guys can go out and win. And that's ultimately our primary focus. Our incentives are around that. Our commercial teams are focused on net retained revenue is the primary measure, and that comes from helping our customers grow their businesses faster. And so it's deeply entrenched in everything that we do, pretty much across the whole business.
Yeah, and I love that, where, from what you guys talk about publicly to even internally, from the top on down, where, the individual's professional success is directly tied with, with the merchants that they're supporting. And so, your mission is to make commerce better for everyone. We were fortunate to have a very well-known large Shopify Plus brand, Viore, on stage a bit before you, and all the way down to people who they've got a dream and they just want to start the business. Yeah. And so if you want to just talk a little bit about that, on like what are some like the more tangible things you've been excited to bring to market to these brands, again, whether they're this globally well-known brand like Viore or somebody who's just getting started.
Love Viore. It's like fills my entire closet. So thank you wherever Viore is in the room. There's so many places. I think a lot of it depends on the segment. So, in our international markets, we spend a lot of time getting to multi-entity, multi-currency, local exchange settlement to make it easier. In our global markets, we announced that at last editions. There's a bunch of things we did when tariffs came. We worked over the weekend to put our tax calculators and alike into our checkout. Just to make sure people could make sure they're compliant as they're moving through the ups and downs of tariffs on, tariffs off. And these are things that normally would take many of our competitors, I think, months, if not quarters, to ultimately do. And the team rallies relatively quickly when we see an opportunity to make improvements. One of the conversations we've been having a lot recently with some of our larger brands is really twofold. How do we eliminate blind spots in their go-to-market? Most of that lives in their brick and mortar. So I'm assuming like you're probably representative of most of Shopify's embedded base and ecosystem, where you're probably mostly on our e-commerce platform, but our retail offering's very, very strong. And one of the things that we solve for many of our merchants that operate in both e-commerce and in brick and mortar is that space in between of what happens to my customer when they're not on my site. I see everything about them. But when they walk into my store, I'm a little bit blind. I've either got to have an amazing loyalty program, Nordstrom-like, or I've got to have some email capture process in place. And so with Shop Pay at the edge, we capture a lot of that information. And unlike many other express checkouts, we actually feed that information back into the CDP to enrich targeting so that you know who was in your store, what they purchased, tie it back to your loyalty programs. Helps a lot with retargeting. So that or the impact of agentic on SEO and some of the things that we're seeing across the business, we like to share how to help manage that. We spend time in those areas.
Awesome. And I know we're going to dive into some of the AI components in a little bit. And right before you, we had Alex Jancher, the CEO and founder of Passport. And he was even talking about with you guys where you launched your multi-entity, single site components on, to help these brands scale globally. And so it's just so exciting to see these things that sometimes are just a bullet in the seasonal release, and it can completely change how these businesses operate. Something maybe to dive into a little bit with Shop Pay, which is really taken over the internet and might take over more than just the .coms that everybody's running their sites on. But maybe talk to us a little bit about that, where why do you guys continue to stress so much focus on the checkout and Shop Pay and some of the benefits these brands are seeing there?
We believe deeply that that any latency in checkout or in that shopping experience is ultimately pollution. That's not my phrase. I stole that from Toby. And we work every single day. So there's 1,000 of our engineers are dedicated exclusively to checkout. That's all they work on, is trying to grab milliseconds out of every single step, because we believe long-term that a frictionless experience leads to higher conversion rates. Higher conversion rates means more success for our merchants. And so Shop Pay is one of those frictionless experiences that we believe can be delightful if you get a chance to use it for the first time. If you've been using it many times, it starts to feel very commonplace. But that checkout experience, the follow-up on logistics to see where that item is in transit and that it'll show up on time, that assurance and trust building has become synonymous with the purple button. And so we believe deeply that there's that audience that shops on that platform is very unique. So for example, the average household income skews higher and younger on Shop Pay than on Apple Pay. And that may surprise some people in the room, but that's a very unique audience of roughly 250 million Shop Pay users that are in the marketplace. So it's a very sought-after community that has a lot of influence and buying power in the market, that have picked a low-friction experience like Shop Pay and are using it on a pretty regular basis. So, and the good news is we've made it easier than ever for enterprises, if any of you were in the room, that aren't with Shopify yet, but maybe you're in contract, you can't quite get out yet. You can start by putting Shop Pay at the edge. If you talk to Tapestry or Victoria's Secret or some of the others, they started their relationship with us with Shop Pay on some of their core brands and then worked building out other capabilities over time. So it's a great way to get started if you're not fully on Shopify quite yet.
That's great. My only complaint about Shop Pay is I never can think about purchasing. I hold my thumb over and then I buy, and so the conversion rate definitely is much greater. And so when you guys think about, again, from like payments is a good example, and from even the brand I was talking to earlier that's moving over to Shopify, one of the big things or actually the number one thing that they called out was it's just so easy to really expand their technology stack with their partners. And so I know as you continue to expand what Shopify brings to market, there's build, there's buy, there's partner. And so if you can help just explain a bit, what do you think about when you guys are going about the partner ecosystem? And then maybe we'll dive into things on the fulfillment side, because I know we've been partnering very closely, especially in, I'd say, recent quarters.
Yeah, for sure. To all of our partners in the room or partners that are outside the room, hopefully they'll get a chance to see this. Thank you. I love our partners. I cannot tell you, it's one of the very first places I invested when I first came to Shopify was investing in our partner ecosystem, helping them build out capabilities, helping them build out new lines of business, developing a practice on top of Shopify, just not what I would call maybe a legacy referral engine is almost the way that I would think about it. The reasons why customers come to Shopify from a merchant perspective is, the conversion rate, best converting checkout on the planet, the best total cost of ownership on the planet, and we future-proof the business. The edition releases that we do every 6 months are roughly 100 or so new features that we bring to market. But the reason why partners come to our platform is kind of for the same thing. The growth of the business is so strong that they've seen a shift in the marketplace. One of the metrics I've shared at Investor Day back in 23, and we've shared it now publicly a few times, is we measured the number of, this is not to be too cliche with the room, number of imports versus exports of Shopify merchants. And we bring on in 2020, end of 23, that number had escalated to 38 to 1, meaning we were winning 38 customers to Shopify for every one that left us and went to the competition. That number at the end of 24, heading into 25, was now 42 to 1. And so if you're a partner in the market, you've seen your embedded base from that legacy partner or client that you've been working with, commerce platform, you've been seeing your base migrating away. And you know that something shifted in the market, and if you don't have a Shopify practice, you should probably go start and build one. Mm-hmm. And so that's a lot of what we've seen with our partners, is recognizing that there's a shift in the market, and we do a lot of things to help get them off the ground and accelerate them. We embed our ProServe teams with them at our cost to help them get up off the ground, do the first few engagements on their own, and then we introduce them to the rest of the partners in the ecosystem so that they can work across organizational lines where maybe they don't have a superpower, but someone else does.
That's great. And you mentioned future-proofing, which has really been the theme so far, all of today, from what Drew talked about and what Melissa talked about and our other speakers. And so, you guys, I know, started off really catering towards the small business, and then evolved very quickly into mid-market and Shopify Plus, and are now bringing on a lot of the most well-known brands in the world at the enterprise level. And so when you think about future-proofing at that mid-market and enterprise level, what's top of mind for you? Because obviously you have to work hand in hand with the product team for what you guys can actually bring to market and help these brands thrive and reach their full potential.
Yeah, I think we have a very unique view. This isn't broadly known, but over the last 6 months, just watching how the market has shifted, this notion of features stacking on top of a core platform is actually, we think, going to go away in the long run. We think it's going to be all about hardening a core platform and building for extensibility. And so we've reoriented our roadmap to basically take advantage of what we believe will be an AI-first layer that will sit on top of these core platforms. So it's reshaped the way we think about our product strategy. As we go into the future, one of the things, I go back to Toby again. Toby's just a fascinating guy, man. He sits at the forefront of really all the most interesting things that are happening in the next 5 to 10 years, right? On the board at Coinbase, sees everything crypto, has a very clear point of view of where commerce is going, and that opinion gets baked into everything that we see. Brett Taylor, who used to be on our board, we have a very strong working relationship with him. He helped a lot with some of my early work that I did at Shopify, is now the chairman over at OpenAI. And so the connective tissue that Shopify has really sits at the confluence of everything that's going to be new, that we think is meaningfully going to change the way people go about purchasing and finding new products and services. And so all of that comes into this point of view that says, what will commerce look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What will it look like next year? And we literally pivot and adjust that roadmap every single 6 weeks during product reviews to make sure that we're pointing the ship in the right direction. A little bit of what Toby announced just a few days ago before earnings, 3 new capabilities that we've made available for agentic commerce. We believe that will be the next platform, just like social emerged as a set of kind of audience grabbing and then turned into a place where commerce occurred. Mm-hmm. We believe that will absolutely occur across some of the biggest frontier models that are in market, and it'll start with OpenAI.
And curious, whatever you can share there's the AI impact of what happens on site, and then there's also the AI impact that happens, a bit outside of the direct Shopify ecosystem from what you guys host, but Shopify still might influence or help support that. So curious, anything you can just share there and kind of the direction that you see things heading?
It's hard for me to see outside of Shopify. I think everyone has an opinion. I'm not sure any of us have high confidence in what it's going to be. We're kind of directionally putting our finger in the air. I can tell you inside of Shopify, the democratization of AI is a very unique point of view. And I'll explain that just for a second. Most firms that I talk to, and I've had this conversation now with some of my colleagues over at Accenture and GCP and a bunch of other places, will think about AI as this thing that lives within their machine learning or data science teams. Maybe there's one or two people in the product organization who are thinking about it, but it's kind of in a corner in the organization. That we have taken a wildly different approach, and it actually started on the commercial team. We decided that we were going to put AI into everyone's hands at Shopify. And so now 700 of my employees, there's 3,000 total in the org, but 700 of them have Cursor up and running right now and are in GitHub. About 500 of them are using Gumloop. And so there we're going out using pretty much all the frontier models that you guys have seen, some in-house stuff that we've done on our own. We've built some in-house MCPs that bundle with Gumloop, which is an MCP. And every single person across the organization is finding ways to vibe code up solutions to create an exoskeleton around their work. Sometimes it's amplifying a strength that they have that they want to make even better. They have a high opinion with deep domain expertise of the way they want to show up, so they build that in. Sometimes it's addressing a weakness, something that they either don't like doing or don't do well, and they build that AI infrastructure around. We actually released, I think, Jamie Dimon was on stage probably 6 weeks ago at a conference and said something along the lines of JP Morgan Chase had done 650 new tasks that they had built agentically across their business. And at Shopify, just the commercial team has done over 700 of those. So, and we're wildly not even remotely close to that size. And so I'm a firm believer that the way this all starts is, one, you democratize it and make it available across everything in your organization. That'll start with tasks. As tasks begin to get connected, the inputs and outputs of each of those tasks, and they start to daisy chain together, now you're starting to automate workflows. As you automate workflows, one of the things we've observed is business process that sat on top of the business before also now has to change. And then on top of business process changing, your rituals will end up ultimately changing. So it's almost the exact opposite of what I think is maybe more traditional, which is someone sits in the back office and picks a thing that they're going to go do, and then they push it to the organization. We're crowdsourcing from the bottom what our employees believe is most valuable, and then we're elevating it up, and it's kind of changing the way the company operates.
I love that, and I mean, it kind of reflects how you guys have built Shopify, where just through the open API, and we emulate a lot of that at ShipBob, you're really releasing that to your partner ecosystem and to your customers, to where, kind of grassroots, like what do they want to build, and then you can obviously learn a lot there. And I know from our conversations about Shopify and ShipBob and how we can partner more together, or even some of the preparation for Fulfilled. Each time we talk, like, all right, I gotta stay on track, because I just want to go into deep dive into how you guys are leveraging AI, because it's pretty fascinating, and I think it's such a strong signal of like where everybody is empowered for that, and how that will of course translate to the product and engineering teams and what all the customers get access to. But maybe back to some of the trends you're seeing more in the ecosystem. And so I'd say, there's always uncertainty going into the year, depending, seeing how it's going to be compared to the prior years. And we've seen really strong growth, at ShipBob this year. I know you guys are just reported some very strong growth at Shopify, even from like the same segment growth, year over year, and just a bit more positivity on like the consumer sentiment. But just curious, like, what is your take? I know everybody in this room is really thinking like, what is peak season going to look like? How should we start formulating our hypotheses on what 2026 looks like? Any opinions there that you can share?
Look, I don't have a crystal ball. We thought we would see more impact from tariff and macro market uncertainty. We haven't seen that. You heard that from Jeff Hoffmeister during earnings. Everything seems to be pretty strong. Inventory on hand seems to be strong. Certainly, there's been some disruption in the market, but I think the market's responded relatively quickly. Who knows? I think JP Morgan Chase just came out with an estimate that rate cuts were coming around the corner. I think that's showing up in the market this morning. We'll see if that actually manifests. All of that seems to be really, really good news. You know what I mean? Like we think there's a productivity gain that will come from the topic we just talked about, AI, that will unlock all sorts of value for both customers and employers alike. And so that should lead to more investment, more sets of capabilities coming out, and that snowball just seems like it's moving in the right direction. I'm always the pessimist inside Shopify, so I like to paint doom and gloom someplace out in the future just so we have something to panic about. But to
You're just sandbagging, actually?
Yeah. Not sandbagging. Responsible hedging.
There we go.
Yes, responsible hedging. But look, I think we're coming out. Who knows? Look, there's a lot of uncertainty still, but I think we've got a lot of momentum, just generally speaking, in most of the macro markets, even in the European and Asia markets. Japan's starting to make good moves in the right direction. We have GDP reports that we have across really all countries. A little bit of softness in pockets in Europe, but generally speaking, like things look relatively positive.
Yeah.
And we just want to make sure we're there for all of our merchants to make sure they can take advantage of that and help serve their customers as best they possibly can.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting ever since, the election cycle, of course, ended last year, where it wasn't just, the presidential race, but, down to local elections, and of course that eating into a lot of the Meta and TikTok spend, which is where, especially on the direct-to-consumer side, a lot of these brands, they drive the revenue, and peak season seemed to perform rather well last year, and so be curious to see how this year. And then, of course, there's, with the tariff impact, Temu and Shein, who were probably the largest benefactors of the de minimis rules that used to be in place, and I think that's unlocking, it seems like a lot of growth at the macro level for some of the different brands. But, curious, you see any other big macro shifts that are happening that you think are maybe a tailwind or a headwind to these brands?
Look, I think they're the same ones that everyone probably already knows. I think, social, if you're not taking advantage of influencer models, you should be. Influencer models absolutely drive awareness and audience loyalty. Like they just work. That's not a trick shot. That's just, if you're not there yet in your maturity model, you probably should. If you don't have wholesale built into your go-to-market engine and you're looking to scale, wholesale is a great way. We have an offering that allows you to do that across Shopify storefronts. If you don't want to do it directly with a traditional wholesaler, you can do it with us, but you can do it offline with someone else as well. I think brick and mortar, oddly enough, a lot of people have stayed away from it. I think brick and mortar is going to make a comeback. The tactile touch, feel, engage with my product really, really works. You talk to all the big luxury houses, all the maisons out of France and alike, they will tell you their brand anchors off of their in-store experience, not their digital experience. And I think there's some lessons to be learned there. I think it's been wildly under-leveraged. I think Viore in the room, wherever you are, Viore does it really, really well. I think it's got a bad rap, and I think it's a place that we're seeing growth, and if done correctly, can reinforce the brand.
Completely agree. And it was last night at dinner talking to one of our customers. They're actually preparing to launch their first store ever. And then you talked to Viore, they were talking about how they're about to launch their 100th store. And so, there's the benefits, across multiple channels of, bringing it in person and launching in target markets, again, depending on wherever their customer base is really located, again, whether that be Los Angeles or New York or outside of the United States as well. I know that I've personally benefited greatly from Shopify, so really appreciate you being here. I know a lot of people in the audience have as well. Before we let you go, I did want to open it up to some people in the audience,
Sure.
So we might have some questions here, and I'm sure you'll get hounded afterwards as well. But yeah, really appreciate you taking the time.
It's all good.
So, who has questions here for Bobby?
I do think, though, speed of delivery is going to be one of those key requirements. If you look at Perplexity as an example, you go in and search Perplexity and say, what's the criteria in that long tail? It's not a keyword prompt. You're asking for best price, quality, and in a particular period of time. The way that if you deconstruct how Perplexity thinks about that, I think there's a couple things, maybe going back to, I missed this in your earlier question. Affiliate, in my opinion, is going to be a bigger and bigger part of your business than what it is today. Because when Perplexity goes out and looks for customer validation and customer satisfaction, it's not looking at your customer ratings, it's looking at third-party validation to give you customer value. And so affiliate will elevate at least the way the algorithms are operating today. I think time of delivery is going to be a much bigger part of it. I want it at the best quality, at the best price, at the best time. And best time is one that candidly hasn't been leveraged really well. I think it shows up at the very end of the shopping experience, and this is where ShipBob and many of the others play in this space. Like, you guys do it uniquely well, but like getting the product as fast as you can into the customer's hands, in my mind, is going to be a key decision criteria, especially in an AI search influenced go-to-market model. So I don't know what the conversion rates are, but I think philosophically that's what we're seeing. And I've done a personal project on Perplexity search and search kind of algorithms, and it's pretty clear that those two things are going to stand out. Affiliate and time to delivery are going to be key components.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting on the AI search side. So it's almost like regardless of LLM, the combination of affiliates on awards, on PR, just like the influence there and how that feeds up to the LLMs, which are gaining in their power. And I'm glad you touched on some of the Shop Promise stuff. So I know we'll in the nearest term be able to talk more broadly about Shop Promise and the things that we're doing together. And something that Melissa talked about in her session was really DEA, or delivery estimate accuracy, which is top of mind for us and something we're reporting on to all of our customers, because it's not just the speed, but it's also the promise within like a certain window, which is really top of mind. And it's really exciting too of how we can take that data, via API or through integrations with companies like yourself, and how do you pull that up, not just to the checkout, but to the PDP or to the home page, and sometimes even all the way to the ad level to really differentiate from your competition as well. So it's pretty exciting.
You triggered something for me that I also missed earlier, but I thought maybe I'd bring it up here. Yes, the in-store experience is all about how you replicate your brand and how you want it to manifest for your customer or target audience. But so is the unboxing experience, right? Making sure if you don't have that digital storefront, how do you have that surprise and delight unboxing experience that really just feels very Apple-esque, if you will, like I got something special that was finally delivered to me. I think that's another key area that I see more and more firms spending time on what that, you can go for low cost, that works. But you can also go for something premium and distinct in the unboxing, and I think that's another place I see a lot of clients moving.
Oh, agreed. I know we've got our place right here in the front. They do an amazing job with the unboxing experience, as do many others in the room as well. Well, Bobby, thank you again for joining us. I know you're over in Dallas, and appreciate you taking the drive over.
Awesome. All right, thanks everybody.